verse 35. Vande Shri Guru Gaurango Radha Govinda Sundaro Sagunau Giyate Chata Gita Gudarta Gauravam Umayana Timinandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshorn Mingatanjena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shreyan Sadharma Viguna Paradharma Sanushtitat Sadharme Nidanam Shreya Parodharmo Bhayavaha. So I believe we did actually begin discussion of this verse last week, but we didn't go through the purport, and I think we just had a kind of preliminary discussion. So the translate this, and this is, as I believe I mentioned last week, it is a well-known verse, cited, many times by our gurus. So the translation, even if it is imperfect, it is better to do one's duty according to one's nature than to do another's well. Even death and the discharge of one's own duty is better, for to perform another's is dangerous. Okay, remember we did have somewhat extensive discussion, and Ganga Leela brought up some nice points as well. And we were simply discussing how we are all at different phases on our journey, and according to that we have particular duties, and everyone is at a different phase and everyone has a different duty. And so and as Gangalila pointed out, that is something that is dynamic. It's not a static thing. What is our duty at one point in our lives that may change at another point down the road. So it is something dynamic and alive and moving. It's a living thing. And so as serious, sincere spiritual practitioners, our duty is to try to be alert to that, day by day in our practicing life, see what lessons are coming to us, what is appropriate for us at any given time, and what is the appropriate way forward, and to feel this kind of like centeredness within our own selves. Because it's easy to get lost in, being a part of a sangha, being a part of a community is a wonderful thing. But of course, if we're not approaching it in the right way, there's also the downside, right? And one of those is that we can lose clarity as to what is our own duty, what is our own path. We can get lost in like mixing so much on more of a social level rather than a purely spiritual level. And but it may also be on a spiritual level, but without perspective, right? And this is why actually, and this is one reason why, Gurudev, he mentioned once that actually having association that is very high above us may not necessarily be the most helpful, but sometimes having the association of someone who's like a little bit ahead of us, that may be more helpful for us, because if you're associating with someone who is, say we're like kindergarten students and we're hanging out with a PhD professor, how much are we going to get? They're too far above, our current level of understanding. So how much are we going to be able to access? So rather, if we're in grade 1 and we're hanging out with someone in grade 2, that could be much more beneficial for us. So and it's something that we saw with Gurudev, like that spirit of imitation can come out. In the association of our Gurudev. He's a Paramahamsa Vaishnava. He may do things. He is on a infinitely higher level than the average practitioner, and therefore what he can do and what's appropriate for him may at times be very different than what's appropriate for ourselves. And so, but if we're associating closely with him, with such a great saint, then the danger of imitation comes in, right? And that's something that I've seen, and I'm probably guilty of as well, where you imitate. And sometimes parents, right, they may
this may be something that they tell their children, listen to what I say, don't follow what I do, because everything that I do may not be appropriate for you, so you just listen to my instructions. So that danger is there in the association in the company of a very great saint, that we don't know, we may not have that sense of discrimination, what to follow, what not to follow, So we need to develop this kind of like inner awareness, inner groundedness, inner centeredness, where we are, what is our world, what's appropriate for us, what are our lessons, and we want to develop this kind of wholeness in that. And envy is another issue that can come up, that we compare ourselves with others and we're envious because they seem to be doing better than ourselves in different ways, and then we may try to imitate or obtain the same things, but that's not appropriate for us. We're not feeling confidence, and we're not feeling comfortable with where we are and who we are and what's right for us here and now. So that's something that we need to try to be aware of. And, this is something that I remember I struggled with, especially when I first went to live in India, because I was in an environment where, there was an element of like kind of competing to get Gurudev's attention, and there, sometimes more subtle, sometimes it might come out in more of a gross way, and so I remember at times I felt some envy of others who they seemed to be very close with our guru. They're doing such wonderful service. He was very happy, and I remember I struggled with envy for some time. But as time went by and I began to feel more of my own connection with our guru, even though it wasn't like it was up close and personal, but I began to realize that even from my small position and even with my small capacity, there was scope for developing a profound heart connection. I began to, and so I began to realize there's no need to be envious. There's, Shrudashava Prabhu, he was a very dear friend. He used to say, it was something kind of like a theme of his, like, there's enough for everyone. There's enough sweetness for everyone. There's enough love for everyone. There's enough beauty for everyone. In this world, one of the reasons there's envy is because there's limited resources, right? And there's limited, and we are limited finite beings. So we have limited capacity to give love and receive love. And there are limited resources that are only available to a certain number, right? So we live in this limited and finite world. And we forget that we're approaching a different plane, and there's a new set of rules here. It's a different ball game. There's more than enough for everyone. One drop, it is mentioned, one drop of the infinite is also infinite. It's like 0 minus 0, it's still 0. So that is the nature of the divine, of the absolute. There's enough for everyone, and the Lord's heart is broad enough to reciprocate with unlimited numbers of souls. So I remember as I began to feel that more and more in my time in India in connection with our guru, then I realized there's no need to be envious. I'm very happy with whatever little I have, whatever connection I have, and it is the same for everyone. There's enough Krishna for everyone. There's enough beauty, sweetness, love for everyone. And there's no need to be envious, and there's no need to necessarily compare ourselves with others in a negative way, but let's try to understand where we are here and now, what's appropriate for us, and take the necessary steps to move forward. And Marie's posted a nice quote here, comment. If you're chasing after the path someone else is on, you don't make much progress on your own. Yeah, it can be kind of like a blindness, right? That you lose sight of your own position and needs, and you lose time, you waste time also. So, okay, well, we can also read this commentary. And so this, this point, it can be understood in a general sense, which we've just discussed. But here, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he also discusses this verse from a more specific and deeper consideration, which we'll hear. The eternal, super excellent, natural function, Dharma of the soul, is pure devotion for Dhokshaja, the transcendental Lord. Therefore, even if this function is somewhat imperfectly attempted by one with external malpractices, such an attempt will be superior to the good practices within the material modes of nature and worldly chain of actions and habits foreign to the soul's nature. Even if death occurs during the cultivation of such pure devotion and proper saintly association, it is the bestower of the ultimate good. But in the name of good practices, to ignorantly follow another's path, anything other than devotion for the Lord, Dvitiya Binivesh is Bhayavaha, endangering the spiritual progress of the soul. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj is taking a deeper angle of vision here, giving a deeper analysis here, a more fine point he's making here that our fun, we discussed earlier in earlier meetings, this point that we all have two dharmas, right? There is the relative dharma, by which I mean that which is pertaining to our temporary existence here and now in this temporary world, right? That we're male or female, that we have children, that we have parents, that we have a job, we have people to take care of, right? We all have particular duties like that. That represents one duty, the relative duty. But then we also have the absolute duty, which pertains to our eternal life as eternal souls. And so then that is our higher duty. And that means, that refers to our spiritual practices. We are on 335. And welcome, we've had a few more join us. Rama Sarup is with us. And also Lainey has joined us maybe for the first time. Welcome. Yes, we're on chapter 3, verse 35. So our spiritual practices, that which is enriching to the soul, that represents the absolute Dharma, our highest Dharma, the supreme Dharma. And so this is what Srila Sridhar Maharaj is pointing out here, that other dharmas, they may change, right? As we cycle through different births, as we cycle through different planes of life and different species of life, our dharma will change, right? Our dharma as a particular type of human being in one birth will be different, say, from an animal birth in another cycle, right? So that temporary dharma is something that will always change according to the thread of our karma. But our absolute dharma, fundamental dharma, does not change. That we are eternal lovers of the divinity. That is something that will not change. And so that is what Srila Sridhar Maharaj is referring to here. Okay, so we can go on to verse 36, unless anyone wants to add any further thoughts. Okay, we'll chant some more verses. Arjuna Vacha Attakena Prayuktoyam Papam Charati Purushaha Anichannapi Vaishneya Baladiva Niyojitaha Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Kamaesha Krodesha Rajaguna Samudbhava Mahashano Mahapapma Vidyana Miha Vaidinam Tumena Vriyate Vanir
Yatha darsho malena cha, yatol benavito garbhas tata tenedam avirtam jnanametena, yanino nityavairina, kamadupena kunteya dushperena nalena cha. So I'll read the translation here. This is a very relevant question. One thing to remember as we're going through Bhagavad Gita is that Arjuna, in a sense, and I hope this isn't offensive, he's kind of like a prop. That's probably disrespectful. No, by which I mean that this is actually like the whole thing's kind of a setup, for us. Arjuna knows everything, and Arjuna has an eternal relationship with Krishna. Arjuna is an enlightened being. Arjuna doesn't need to hear these instructions, but this is all like a setup, for our benefit. And so sometimes, me, like when I'm going through it, there are some instances where I'll just like laugh out loud because the questions that Arjuna asks, it's just so obvious he's asking for our sake, they're like exactly the questions that, like it's all been scripted, there's one, there's also one nice comment of Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada that I remember sometimes, that he mentions how in the Indian traditional culture, there are so many fine nuances. It's a highly cultured society, and there are many nuances and subtleties, in communication, which can sometimes make things difficult. When I was visiting last month, I was in Ireland, and I visited the South Indian family, and they come from this highly cultured. They're Brahmins, also the highest social class, and we were having a very funny discussion about this. How, and they have a son who like grew up in the West, so he's coming from a different culture, and we were having this. They had this discussion about how, sometimes communication could get very complicated because there's so many nuances. There's so many like layers of politeness. And like there's nothing said directly, everything's indirect, and no one will ask for exactly what they want. It's like you kind of have to figure it out, and there are all these like particular codes, and I think in any fine society you'll find that, but I think in India maybe a little more elaborate. But anyway, one comment that Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada he made in regards to the presentation of Bhagavad Gita is that he said in a family, traditionally in an Indian family, a new bride, she'll go to live with her husband's family, right? If I'm remembering correctly. And that her new mother-in-law, they have this kind of funny relationship where they've become close family, but there isn't really intimacy there. And so there's some hesitation, some shyness there. And so if the mother-in-law wants to give instruction to her new daughter-in-law, she won't do it directly because they're not so close yet, and she feels some hesitation to do that. And so what she'll do is she'll instruct her own daughter in front of her daughter-in-law. And so it's understood she's indirectly actually instructing her daughter-in-law. And so Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he mentioned that we can see that Krishna's instructions to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita are like that. Actually, Krishna is instructing us, but he's using Arjuna as like a prop, because that makes it easier for us. If Krishna's, kind of like just, shouting instructions at us and giving, so many corrections, then we may feel ashamed, we may feel bad, So he's indirectly giving, through the medium of Arjuna. So here Arjuna asks, this is the $1 million question.
he asks Krishna, Arjuna inquired, by what is the living being compelled to commit sinful activities, even unwillingly, as if by force? How is it that we do things that we don't want to do, that are not good for us, that are not good for anyone? It's like there's no rational thought, there's no plan behind it. It's just this force, this urge that comes up and compels us to do things that we would really rather not do. It's a very relevant question. Anybody can relate to this question, right? So Arjuna is voicing it for us. And then Krishna replies, it is calm lust. It is something beyond our control. The Supreme Lord replied, it is the desire to enjoy the mundane, kama, lust, that induces a person to commit sin. And in different situations, it produces anger. And earlier on, perhaps in this same chapter, maybe it was at the end of the second chapter, maybe someone else will remember better, Krishna also described this very helpful sequence that, through association in a particular environment, desire will grow within us, right? We will start, this is something anybody can try as a home experiment, right? If you hang out at particular people, or you hang out in a particular environment, then you will start to, you'll start to feel desire for those things. If someone's always talking about pizza, then, like I'll experience that sometimes. I'm not thinking about pizza or whatever, and then somebody mentions, all of a sudden I need some pizza. That's how the mind works. So through particular association, we will develop associated desires. And then, as the sequence continues, from that desire, then attachment develops. But then, when that attachment cannot be fulfilled, when that desire cannot be fulfilled, then anger will arise, right? Now I want some pizza, and maybe, let's say I've ordered the pizza, I'm waiting for the pizza, I'm salivating for that pizza. And then at the last moment, the delivery company calls and said, oh, sorry, there was a mix-up and we can't get you your pizza. Like now that desire, we've been separated from that desire that's growing within us. Then we're going to be angry. Where is my pizza? Who's the manager? I want to complain, right? So when desire cannot be fulfilled, then frustration and anger will arise as a result. So this is also being referred to here. It is utterly insatiable, extremely malicious, and the worst enemy of the living being in this world. Because it's something that just is totally beyond our control, and it can come in the most unexpected circumstances, and it's a very peculiar thing, You can have the best laid plans, I've had this reflection sometimes, that like you can draw up like an airtight plan, an airtight master plan, right? But then you forget, humans. You forget the human factor, right? You forgot that eventuality, You can come out with the best plan, but then lust will come in, or envy, or all these other things, right? They can come and everything's spoiled. So these things, they're completely very dangerous because they're completely beyond our control. They can come in very unexpectedly and they can destroy everything in a moment. This is another thing. You may spend years building, creating something, but a moment of anger can destroy everything. Or uncontrolled desire can destroy. And we see that, right? we hear that and we see that, we may experience that ourselves. But like if we look in the public sphere as an example, like how many renowned or very well-known persons destroy a career built over a lifetime because they can't control their desire. There's so many examples, very sad examples of that. They cannot control their desire. So it is a very dangerous thing. And now there's this analogy given of different degrees of this lust, this desire. As fire is thinly veiled by smoke, as a mirror is thickly covered with dust, and as the embryo remains completely enclosed within the womb, similarly, this desire covers the consciousness of the living being in these 3 degrees of intensity, according to the modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance, respectively. So this kama, it affects different persons to different degrees, right? And these can be categorized by these 3 modes, these 3 energies of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Ignorance is a very heavy, it's a very weighty, it's a level of the material energy which covers us in a very heavy way. And so the analogy given for the mode of ignorance is an embryo being enclosed within the womb, very thickly covered. The idea is that the soul, right? The soul is within, but the nature of the soul is being obscured by the material energy. And in the mode of ignorance, it's very thickly covered in the same way that an embryo is covered within the womb. So that true spiritual nature is very heavily covered. And then the second degree, the mode of passion, the analogy given here, the mirror covered with dust. So that spiritual nature is also covered, but it is a little bit less. It's a little bit less, so that the true nature of the soul may come through a little more clearly. And then the least covered, the most lightly covered, is the energy of goodness, a sattva gun. And the analogy is given here of fire that is thinly veiled by smoke. So this is in this state of conditioning, it is still a state of material conditioning because the pure nature of the soul is still obscured to some extent, but it is the least obscured, and more, there will be more of a glimpse of the true nature of the soul coming through. And so this is why we are encouraged to try to, as far as possible, live our lives according to the mode of goodness, the energy of goodness, and living the lifestyle, eating particular foods, and so on and so forth. Our work and our relationships. We will try to keep it on that level, the mode of goodness, those things that are pertaining to the energy of goodness. And this is a subject which is discussed more elaborately later in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14. This is more extensively discussed. We can come back to that more later. But I mean, maybe just as a small example, this is one reason why eating meat is not helpful, because it is in the mode of to eat, dead flesh. It is in the mode of ignorance. That is a very, that's a heavy manifestation of material energy. And so that will weigh us down, that will cover us. And then another example, taking a lot of caffeine or stimulants, that is in the mode of passion. So that will also further engender our conditioning. Okay,
Continue then, verse 39. Knowledge is covered by desire, the constant enemy of the wise. It burns like an insatiable fire, never satisfied by offerings of butter. And this is the point we were just making, right? Like through your logic, through your rational reasoning, you can work out a particular situation, and you can work out a proper way forward. And it all makes sense. It works perfectly. But then this kama, this lust can come in. It's like say you've built up a house of cards, and you've got some elaborate construction here. And then that calm is like someone knocking, like just with the flick of a finger, knocking it all down. May have taken you hours to build it up, right? One little flick of the finger, the whole thing comes toppling down. So we may, and it can be very frustrating, because we may, rationally, we may have a clear estimation, we may have great clarity on a particular situation, but then lust comes. It's like it's a dangerous variable, that will just come out of left field and take you beyond your control, beyond your inner will even, and just screw everything up. So we may have clear spiritual knowledge as to what is what, but this lust will come and just destroy everything. And you will forget everything. All your knowledge, all your wisdom will be forgotten in a moment. And this analogy, it burns like an insatiable fire, never satisfied by offerings of butter. Because this is the nature of material enjoyment. It's it's never enough. It's never enough. No matter how much you get, it's never enough. And it's described in the scriptures sometimes as hridrogam, heart disease. This is a type of heart disease. No matter how much you get, it's never enough. You're never satisfied. Gangalila, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in the German language, which that's my native tongue, is we don't use lust just for those kind of sexual desires, but lust is for oh, I really have a lust for the pizza you said, or lust for such things. So they use the word more in a broader spectrum. So I'm coming from that. So I'm hearing that it is.
Yes, that's also how I mean it. Yeah, perhaps we should have clarified. I mean, in English, I suppose nowadays maybe it is associated more with the sexual energy, but originally in English, it does have that broader connotation. That strong desire, greed, like that, for whatever it may be, in sexuality or acquiring things, or whatever it may be, food, that insatiable desire, greed that comes up within us. And welcome, we've had a few more join us, Dana and Krishna and Johnny. Actually, I'm sorry, I forgot to say hello to everyone in the beginning. Also Kanakalata and Lynn and Sulalita also with us. Very happy to have our Bhagavad Gita family. Okay. So where were we? Oh yeah, 39. Oh, we're coming to the end of this chapter. Okay, well, I'll go to the end of the chapter, and then we can open up the table for discussion. Thanks for turning on your mic, your cameras. Very nice to see you all. Okay, so we've got the last few verses of the third chapter. Indriyani manobuddhir asya dhishtana muchyate ete vimohayatyesha jnanamavita dehinam tasmatvam indriyanyado Niyamya Bharatarshaba Papmanam Prajahihenam Jnana Vijnana Nashanam Indriyani Pranyahur Indriyebhya Param Manaha Manasastu Parabuddhir Buddheryo Paratastu Sa Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva Samstabhyatmanamatmana Jahi Satcham Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasadam Iti Shri Mahabharate Shata Sahasriyam Samhitayam Vayasikyam Bhishma Parvani Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Karma Yoga Nama Chityo Jaya. So, I'll read these translations. It is said that this enemy desire, dwelling within the senses, mind, and intelligence, covers the perception of the embodied living being and deludes him. Therefore, O noblest of the Bharatas, Arjuna, control your senses and destroy this desire, the embodiment of sin, which destroys both knowledge and realization. It is said by the wise that the senses are superior to matter, the mind is superior to the senses, and the intelligence is superior to the mind, and the soul is superior to even the intelligence. O mighty Arjuna, knowing the soul to be superior to the intelligence, steady the mind with resolute intelligence and destroy the formidable enemy, desire. Wow, very powerful, huh? Very rousing. And this verse 42 is very, very famous. It's a very helpful analysis of the different layers of our existence. I was thinking, I've been thinking about this the last couple of days, how we can understand that reality exists in different layers, right? Srila Maharaj talks about this in one place too. There's the layer of the senses, there's the layer of the mind, there's the layer of the intellect, there's the layer of the ego, the ahankara, and the finest, of course, is the soul, the deepest, and the finest is the soul. So it's something to meditate on as we go through our day, like which layer am I connecting with right now? And when we're coming closer to the soul plane, there's this heaviness that comes within us, the sobriety. When we're on the plane of the senses, there's like this flightiness, like the conditioned soul is described sometimes as lagu, which means very light, like in the way that a feather floats, like in whatever way the wind blows, the feather will go in that way, right? There's no clear ground, there's no clear there's no weightiness, there's no groundedness there. It's like, oh, this is nice. Oh, that's nice. Oh, what's over here? What's over there? There's this lightness, this flightiness when we're in that connecting with that level of the senses. But the closer that we go to the plane of soul, the more we will feel this heaviness, this weightiness, this deep groundedness within us. So this verse is very helpful. Krishna's giving this analysis. And we can look within ourselves and identify, oh, this is the sense, these are the senses playing out. This is the mind playing out. This is the ego. If we sit quietly and just become an observer of our own consciousness and our own movements and our own thoughts, then we can identify. And this verse, I do want to discuss it a little more because there's more to be said. Srila Maharaj actually goes into discussion of this verse quite extensively, and I want to honor that. Maybe we'll save it for next week. But it's just, it's so helpful, these verses,
because it's giving us this awareness. You know, we don't need to just be victims of whatever random urges and thoughts jump in our head, pop out of our heads at any given time. But it's like we can own ourselves and recognize, oh, this is what's going on. Okay, I get it. I'll just lean back and watch the show. You know, I'm not going to get caught up with this. You know, I'll just watch the show, my mind playing out, you know, but I don't need to get embroiled with that. You know, just let it be some light entertainment. You know, I don't need to get caught up with that. You know? So it's so helpful. It's like we're being given this map, you know, we're being given this life guidebook, the ultimate guide to life, and we can start to recognize all these things within ourselves and put them within their proper place. And we don't need to be slaves to them. We don't need to be victims to them. And then this final verse is so powerful. It's almost like a benediction that Krishna is bestowing upon us. Like he's giving us that power. Now, knowing the soul to be superior to the intelligence, steady the mind with resolute intelligence and destroy the formidable enemy, desire. Very, very powerful blessing there. Does anyone want to, I'd love to hear some thoughts. Kanakalata, you're always very quiet, but looking very thoughtful. I'd love to hear something from you.
Yes, it's difficult to talk after you because there are a lot of thoughts coming and going, and the sentence that touched me more today, when you said when we keep quiet, we can feel what is the feeling inside of us. It is the ego, the knowledge. This is a lot of food for the thought because knowing ourselves, it's a long way. Know ourselves to discover where I'm going. My ego is bigger than my soul. Which point is it's a lot of food for my thoughts.
Nice. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Kanakalata. Nice. Anybody else want to share anything?
Yeah, I can share something. I just having this knowledge that, oh yeah, I got angry. Like, why did I get angry? Oh, that's right, because I'm like addicted to sense gratification. Oh, dang. So every time I get angry now, I have this knowledge of how am I over engaging. Like, the habit is to engage towards the lower, like the conditioned nature is the sensualism, is the food addictions, is the whatever, I need to, it's those kinds of things that I've just been conditioned to. So how that really, having a boyfriend all the time, like all that stuff is just, it doesn't actually get me anywhere. And I heard from a talk from Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada that actually it was on Prabhupada Memories. I was watching one of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada sharing about how he told a story about how when Prabhupada said, don't itch your scratch, like he was scratching a thing. He was like, this is like sense gratification, how when you scratch and you think it's going to give you relief, but no, then blood will come. I'm not telling it correctly, but like you keep scratching the thing and then it bleeds. So that's like how, I remembered that in the dialogue about how attachment to the objects of the senses leads to, that you get attached to them and then anger comes. Pass.
Yeah, I was
Nice.
trying to explain. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. I just was expressing appreciation. Very nice. Thanks, Chintami. That was great.
I got to back up a parent on trying to explain that to her daughter last night.
Sorry, what did you say? I missed the first part of that.
I got to back up a parent because she was telling her daughter that she had had enough of the sugary snacks and the salty chips and needed to not go get more during game night. They were going home. Dad was cooking supper. It would be waiting for them. There would be healthy food. She'd had enough. And she said, but I'm getting braces next week, so I need to eat as much of this as I can now because I won't be able to eat it then. I'm like, oh, no, that's not how it works. Like, nice try, but biology and psychology both are against you there. You need more of it now, and then you'll miss it more then. You need to start figuring off how. You know?
Right. Nice. Thank you, Marie. Anybody else? Ramaswarup's turned on his camera. You want to share anything? Oh, now he's turned it off. Oh no, it's on.
Ramaswarup, we want to hear from you.
Oh, maybe
He may not have good sound because he's
Yeah.
driving.
Yeah. What about Sulalita? Okay,
All right,
Ramaswarup.
there he goes. He's unmuted.
Yeah, sorry,
Ramaswarup,
I'm having terrible. Jai, I'm having terrible reception right now. I'm sorry.
Okay, next
It's really
time.
spotty.
Next time.
we can hear you just fine.
Okay, Jai. Yeah, this has been wonderful to hear. This reading, this verse. I know I've been on the road now, going through some of this best laid plans being shifted and changed and taken away and things like that. And my responses to them, you know, they're very much, I'm backed into my heart. I can't in a healthy way engage with my intellect because I didn't realize how identified so many of the aspects of where I thought I was coming from and where my love existed was really knotted up in the desire. And the desire, however virtuous you want to put it, it's the foundational illusion. And it's very much a place to live in the heart now and to respond, which is, you know, I don't have a choice but to just go, okay. And in doing so, you know, as Chintamani mentioned with like the anger and everything, it's like, gosh, why have I, you know, full opportunity to more surrendered way with breaking, and it's just, you know, going, it's difficult. And yeah, so it's really wonderful to hear this. And Jai Guru Dev, thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing, Ramaswarup. Unfortunately, some of that was broken up. But what we did here was beautiful and something we can all relate to, I'm sure. Sulalita, I'd love to hear something from you too. You're always very quiet. Also very thoughtful.
Very, very beautiful and inspiring lecture class. Thank you, Shaka Didi. And I feel like you said, I watch my senses, mind, intellect, ego, and I cannot overcome my ego. My soul is weaker than my ego. I feel like that 2 days ago. Some experience like that. And I know what is right, but I cannot do it. I fail my ego. And I don't know how can I overcome this problem, actually.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing, Sulalita. And
Thank you.
I mean, of course, it's a big discussion. That's our whole Bhagavad Gita discussion, right? So it's not
Yes.
a quick answer. But certainly awareness is where it begins, right? That's the first step, having that awareness. That's a major first step. So it's a big step forward. So
Maybe
Oh, you just muted yourself.
maybe
Okay.
one day I can overcome.
By the grace, by the mercy of the Lord and
Yeah.
Guru and Vaishnavas, all things are
Yes.
possible.
Yes. Thank you very much.
We're
Very
all on
beautiful
this.
class for me.
Thank you, Sugalita. We're
Santava.
all on this boat together, right?
Mhm.
And together we are stronger. Together we'll make it.
Yeah.
Lainey, do you want to introduce yourself? I'm not sure if we've met before. Is this your first time here?
This is my first time. Yes, it's Chintamani's fault. I'm a very new student, so I'm quite bewildered at the moment, but very happy to be here. And if there's one thing I can say, is that life is currently presenting me with lots of opportunities for personal growth. I have awareness in abundance, not so much willpower. So yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, well, we're super happy to have you with us. Are you in Australia?
UK.
Oh, you're in UK. Okay, cool. Which part of UK?
In the south, I'm in a town called Bristol.
Okay, okay. We have a beautiful temple. If you're ever in London, we have a beautiful temple. And I'll be there actually in a few weeks, middle of August. And you're very welcome to visit if you're interested. Cool. All right. Well, any final words from anyone? Or should we ask Angelina to pray us out for today? It's been a beautiful meeting, really nice. I love this heart sharing. It makes everything more real, you know.
It's like we're having a map we can use now. Like, where am I engaging from? My senses, my mind, my intelligence? Can I actually go and look for the soul? I like that also very much, that we will have a conversation with our own soul and really train ourselves to become more and more familiar and more at home with the vibration, the sound, the sight of my own soul. So, and yes, 3 Maha mantras together, because that is so beautiful. I love to have everybody unmute too, because it's